The boardroom was dead silent. 6 months of negotiations and $3 billion were about to evaporate into thin air, all because of a traffic jam. Damon Sterling, the ruthless CEO of Sterling Dynamics, sat with his head in his hands, watching his Italian counterpart stand up to leave the restaurant. The hired interpreter was missing. The deal was dead. The waiters froze, terrified to make a sound. But then, a quiet, shaky voice cut through the tension. Not from an executive in a tailored suit, but from the girl holding the water pitcher. She didn't just speak Italian. She spoke the complex, rapid-fire dialect of Venetian commerce. This is the story of how Sophia Hart went from wiping tables to saving an empire, and the dangerous secret she uncovered that changed everything. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of L'Obsidienne, Manhattan's most exclusive dining establishment. Inside, the air smelled of truffle oil, aged leather, and fear. Sophia Hart adjusted the collar of her stiff black uniform. Her feet throbbed. She had been standing for 9 hours straight, running back and forth between the kitchen and the dining floor, carrying trays that weighed more than she did. At 26, Sophia had dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide, a testament to the 2 other jobs she worked to pay off her father's medical debts. "Hart, stop daydreaming and polish table 4 again. I see a smudge." The voice belonged to Rick, the floor manager. Rick was a man who believed that screaming was a form of effective management. He stood by the host stand, checking his watch obsessively, sweat beading on his receding hairline. Sophia didn't argue. She grabbed her cloth and moved to table 4. There was no smudge. The glass surface was immaculate. But arguing with Rick was the fastest way to lose the tips she desperately needed to pay rent this month. "Tonight is not a normal night, people." Rick clapped his hands, the sound echoing sharply in the pre-service quiet. "Damon Sterling is coming. Do you understand what that means? If a fork is out of place, if the water isn't chilled to exactly 45 degrees, heads will roll. My head, then your heads." The kitchen staff grumbled, but the tension was palpable. Damon Sterling wasn't just a CEO, he was a shark in the tech industry. He was known for acquiring companies and dismantling them before the ink on the contract was dry. He was cold, precise, and had zero tolerance for incompetence. Sophia polished the glass in circular motions, her mind drifting elsewhere. 3 years ago, she hadn't been polishing tables. She had been at the top of her class at Columbia, studying Romance languages on a scholarship. She had dreams of working for the UN, of traveling the world. Then the diagnosis came. Her father's cancer, the insurance cap, the choice between her tuition and his chemotherapy. It wasn't a choice at all. Sophia dropped out, took the first 3 jobs she could find, and watched her dreams dissolve into the reality of minimum wage and rude customers. "Sophia," a voice whispered. It was Chloe, the hostess, clutching a stack of menus. "Did you hear? Sterling isn't coming alone. He's meeting Giovanni Moretti." Sophia paused. "The shipping magnate?" "The very same." Chloe nodded, eyes wide. "They say Moretti is notoriously difficult. He refuses to speak English during negotiations. Sterling hired some top-tier translator from the UN to meditate." "Sounds intense," Sophia murmured, moving to the next chair. "It's a merger," Chloe whispered, leaning in closer. "If Sterling buys Moretti's logistics network, he controls the entire European supply chain. It's $1 billion dinner, Soph. And we're making $15 an hour to watch it happen," Sophia said dryly. "Hart! Less talking, more working," Rick barked from across the room. Sophia lowered her head. "Yes, Rick." The doors to L'Obsidienne swung open at 7:00 p.m. sharp. Damon Sterling entered first. He was taller than he looked in the magazines, with broad shoulders that strained against a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sophia's entire life earnings. His face was angular, handsome in a severe way, with eyes the color of steel. He didn't look at the staff. He looked at his watch. Behind him walked his entourage. 3 nervous-looking assistants clutching tablets and files. And then came the Italians. Giovanni Moretti was an older man, heavy-set, with a face weathered by the Mediterranean sun, and eyes that darted around the room with suspicion. He was flanked by 2 bodyguards and a younger man who looked like his son. Rick rushed forward, practically bowing. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Moretti, welcome to L'Obsidienne. Your table is ready." Sterling ignored him. He turned to his chief of staff, a frantic woman named Jessica. "Where is he?" Jessica looked pale. "Mr. Sterling, I'm trying to reach him. The agency said the translator is stuck on the bridge. There was an accident. Gridlock." Sterling's jaw tightened. "We are scheduled to start in 5 minutes. Moretti hates waiting." "I know, sir. He's 10 minutes away on foot if he runs, but get him here, now!" Sterling's voice was a low growl that terrified Sophia, even from 20 feet away. The group moved to the private alcove in the back. It was Sophia's section. Of course it was. "Hart," Rick hissed, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. "You are on water and bread. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact. If you spill a single drop, you are fired before it hits the floor. Got it?" "I got it, Rick." Sophia took the heavy crystal pitcher. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear of Sterling, but from exhaustion. She hadn't eaten since breakfast. She approached the table. The tension was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. Sterling sat opposite Moretti. They were staring at each other. Sterling offered a polite smile. Moretti offered a scowl. The silence stretched. It was agonizing. Jessica, the assistant, was frantically typing on her phone under the table. She looked up at Sterling and gave a tiny, hopeless shake of her head. The translator wasn't coming. Moretti said something in Italian. His voice was gravelly and sharp. "Questa è una mancanza di rispetto. Dov'è l'interprete?" "This is a lack of respect. Where is the interpreter?" Sterling looked at Jessica. "What did he say?" I don't know, sir. I don't speak Italian," Jessica stammered. "I think he's asking about the translator." Sterling cleared his throat. "Mr. Moretti, our translator is delayed. Just a few minutes." He spoke slowly, as if speaking English slower would make the Italian man understand. Moretti narrowed his eyes. He turned to his son and spoke rapidly. "Pensa che io sia stupido? Mi fa aspettare. Io, Giovanni Moretti? Does he think I am stupid? He makes me wait? Me, Giovanni Moretti?" The son laughed cruelly. "Lascialo sudare, papà. Se non capisce, possiamo cambiare I termini, senza che se ne accorga." "Let him sweat, Dad. If he doesn't understand, we can change the terms without him noticing." Sophia froze. She was pouring water into Sterling's glass. She heard every word. The son wasn't just being rude, he was suggesting fraud. She kept her face blank, finishing the pour. "Walk away, Sophia," she told herself. "This isn't your business. You need this job." But as she stepped back, Rick appeared at her elbow, his face red. "Why are you lingering? Move!" he whispered harshly. Sophia moved to the shadows against the wall, but her ears were tuned to the table. Moretti slammed his hand on the table. "Basta!" Sterling flinched. "Jessica, get me anyone on the phone who speaks Italian. Now." "Sir, I'm trying. The service in here is—" Moretti stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at Sterling with pure disdain and spoke in broken English, the first words he had said directly to the CEO. "No respect, no deal." Sterling stood up. desperation cracking his composure. "Mr. Moretti, please. Sit down." Moretti ignored him. He turned to his entourage. "Andiamo. Let's go." It was over. The biggest merger of the year was collapsing because of traffic. Rick was hyperventilating near the kitchen door. Sterling looked like he was about to punch a wall. Sophia looked at the retreating back of Giovanni Moretti. She looked at the devastation on Damon Sterling's face. She thought of her father's medical bills. She thought of the arrogant son who wanted to trick Sterling. Adrenaline flooded her system. Before she could think about the consequences, before she could remember Rick's threats, Sophia stepped forward. "Signor Moretti," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it projected clearly across the room. Moretti stopped. He turned slowly, looking for the source of the voice. He looked past Sterling, past the assistants, and landed on the waitress in the cheap black uniform holding a water pitcher. "Attenda per favore," Sophia continued, her Italian flawless, her accent thick with the specific, lilting cadence of the Veneto region, Moretti's home. "Il signor Sterling ha un grande rispetto per lei. L'interprete ha avuto un incidente. Non è negligenza, è sfortuna." "Wait, please. Mr. Sterling has great respect for you. The interpreter had an accident. It is not negligence. It is bad luck." The room went completely silent. Rick's jaw dropped so low it nearly hit the floor. Damon Sterling turned to look at her, his eyes wide with shock. Moretti stared at her, blinking. "Parli veneziano? You speak Venetian?" "Mia nonna era di Chioggia," Sophia lied smoothly. Her grandmother was from Ohio, but her professor had been from Chioggia, and she had mimicked his accent perfectly for 4 years. "Non vorrebbe sprecare un viaggio a New York per colpa del traffico, vero?" "My grandmother was from Chioggia." "You wouldn't want to waste a trip to New York because of traffic, would you?" Moretti paused. The anger in his face softened, just a fraction. He looked at Sterling, then back at the waitress. "You," Sterling said, his voice breathless. "You speak Italian?" Sophia looked at the CEO. "Yes, sir, I do." "Can you translate?" Sterling asked, the desperation raw in his voice. "Legally? Accurately? I was top of my class in linguistics at Columbia before I left," Sophia said, standing taller. "Yes, I can." Sterling turned to Moretti, gesturing to the chair. Moretti huffed. He looked at Sophia. "Va bene. Ma se sbagli una sola parola, ragazza, me ne vado." "Fine. But if you mistake a single word, girl, I leave." "Non sbaglierò," Sophia said firmly. "I won't." Moretti sat down. Sterling let out a breath that sounded like a deflating tire. He looked at Sophia with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Sit down," he commanded. "Sir, I can't sit. I'm working." "You are not a waitress right now," Sterling snapped, pulling out the chair next to him. "You are my voice. Sit." Sophia placed the water pitcher on the side table. She smoothed her apron. She could feel Rick's eyes burning holes into her back, promising murder later. But she sat. The atmosphere at table 4 had shifted from chaotic panic to a high-wire act of intense focus. Sophia sat on the edge of the velvet chair, acutely aware of the grease stain on her apron and the scuffed toes of her work shoes next to Sterling's polished Italian leather Oxfords. "Tell him," Sterling began, opening a leather dossier, "that Sterling Dynamics is prepared to offer 20% above market value for the logistical hubs in Naples and Venice." Sophia turned to Moretti. She didn't just translate words, she translated intent. She softened Sterling's aggressive corporate tone into the respectful, deferential language required for an elder Italian businessman. "Il signor Sterling riconosce il valore inestimabile di ciò che avete costruito. Offre un premio del 20% sopra il mercato per gli hub. come segno di rispetto per la qualità della vostra operazione. Moretti listened, his fingers steepled. He nodded slowly. The familiarity of the dialect seemed to soothe him. He wasn't dealing with a faceless American corporation anymore. He was dealing with a girl who sounded like home. But the son, Luca, was not so easily charmed. Luca Moretti sat to his father's right, scrolling through his phone, looking bored. But his eyes were sharp. He leaned forward and spoke to his father, fast and low. «Papà, chiedile dei diritti di licenza. L'americano non sa che I sindacati a Napoli sciopereranno il mese prossimo. Possiamo scaricare il debito su di lui». «Dad, ask her about the licensing rights. The American doesn't know the unions in Naples are striking next month. We can dump the debt on him». Sophia felt a cold chill. This was it, the trap. If she translated exactly what Luca said, she would expose the strike. But Luca hadn't told her to translate that part. He was speaking to his father. Moretti looked at Sofia. «Chiedigli se l'offerta include l'assunzione immediata di tutti I debiti e le licenze attuali. Ask him if the offer includes the immediate assumption of all debts and current licenses». He had left out the part about the strike. Sophia looked at Damon Sterling. He was watching her, waiting. He had no idea he was about to buy a company that was days away from a crippling labor strike. «He wants to know», Sophia said, keeping her voice steady, «if the offer includes taking on all current debts and licenses immediately». Sterling nodded confidently. «Of course. Tell him we want a clean handover. We take it all as is». «Sir», Sophia said, breaking protocol. She switched to English, lowering her voice so the Italians wouldn't catch the tone. «Are you sure you want to take all liabilities without a due diligence period?» Sterling frowned, his blue eyes narrowing. «I've done the due diligence. Don't give me business advice, just translate». «But sir—» «Translate», Sterling ordered, his voice icy. Sophia bit her lip. She turned back to Moretti. «Accetta. Si assume tutto». «He accepts. He assumes everything». Luca smirked. He whispered to his father again. «Idioti, li stiamo vendendo una nave che affonda». «Idiots. We are selling them a sinking ship». The dinner progressed. Course after course arrived. Sophia was starving, the smell of the risotto alla Milanese making her stomach cramp. But she didn't touch a crumb. She drank only water. She translated complex clauses about maritime law, equity splits, and stock options. Her brain was firing on all cylinders. It felt good. It felt like her. For the first time in years, she wasn't just a body carrying food. She was an intellect. She was essential, Sterling seemed to notice. Occasionally, while waiting for Moretti to answer, he would glance at her. He noticed the way she navigated the cultural nuances, how she used hand gestures that mirrored Moretti's, how she knew when to pause and let the silence do the work. «Where did you learn this?" Sterling asked quietly during a lull while Moretti checked a document. «Columbia University," Sophia whispered. «And a semester in Venice. Why are you waiting tables?" Sophia looked down at her hands. «Life is expensive, Mr. Sterling." He looked like he wanted to ask more, but Moretti cleared his throat. The negotiations were nearing the end. The deal was almost done. Sterling was about to close a $3 billion acquisition. He looked triumphant. Then, the main course arrived. The osso buco. Rick, the manager, personally brought the tray, trying to insert himself into the glory. He placed the heavy platter down with a trembling hand. "Excellent choice, sirs," Rick said, his voice syrupy. As Rick reached over to pour wine for Luca, his elbow clipped the edge of the sauce boat. It happened in slow motion. The boat tipped. Hot, red, greasy sauce cascaded down. Not onto the table, not onto the floor, right onto Luca Moretti's pristine white silk shirt. Luca shouted, jumping up. "Cazzo! Guarda cosa hai fatto!" Rick turned pale white. I am so sorry, I didn't—" Luca was furious. He shoved Rick backward. Rick stumbled and knocked into Sophia, sending her crashing into the side of the table. A glass of red wine toppled, spilling across the legal documents. The silence that followed was terrifying. The contracts were soaked in Cabernet. Luca was covered in sauce. Rick was shaking like a leaf. Giovanni Moretti stood up, his face purple. "Questo è un circo, un disastro." "This is a circus, a disaster." "Mr. Moretti, please." Sterling stood up, grabbing a napkin to dab at the documents, but the ink was already bleeding. The signature lines were ruined. "We are leaving," Luca spat in English. "You Americans, incompetent." "Wait!" Sterling yelled. "We can reprint the contracts. It will take 20 minutes. Moretti shook his head. "Il momento è passato. Forse non siamo destinati a fare affari." "The moment has passed. Perhaps we are not meant to do business." He signaled his bodyguards. They began to move. Sterling looked defeated. The deal was dead. The accident had given the temperamental Italians the excuse they needed to walk away or demand a higher price later. Sophia pulled herself up from where she had been knocked. Her hip throbbed. She looked at Sterling's devastated face. She looked at Luca's smug, sauce-covered grin. Luca looked relieved. He wanted to walk away so he could negotiate a better deal with a rival company next week. She had heard him whisper it earlier. If they left now, Sterling lost everything. Sophia realized she had one card to play. It was dangerous. It would definitely get her fired. It might even get her sued. But she looked at the sinking ship comment Luca had made earlier. "Mr. Moretti," Sophia called out. Her voice was hard now. Moretti stopped near the door. Sophia switched to English so Sterling could hear every word. "You can walk away because of a stained shirt," Sophia said, her voice ringing through the restaurant. "Or you can stay and sign the deal tonight. Because if you walk out that door, Mr. Sterling is going to find out about the labor strikes in Naples." Moretti froze. Luca whipped around, his eyes wide with panic. Sterling looked at Sophia, confused. "What? What strikes?" Sophia didn't look at her boss. She held Moretti's gaze. "The union strikes scheduled for the 15th, the ones that will halt production for 3 months. The ones you were trying to hide in the liabilities clause so Sterling would be stuck with the bill." The room was colder than a freezer. "Is this true?" Sterling asked, his voice low and dangerous. He looked from Sophia to Moretti. Moretti looked at his son. Luca looked down. The guilt was written all over them. "You were trying to defraud me," Sterling said. It wasn't a question. Moretti straightened his jacket. The bluster was gone. He had been caught. He looked at the waitress with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. "Sei intelligente, ragazza," Moretti muttered. "You are smart, girl. Smart enough to know you need this buyout more than Mr. Sterling needs you," Sophia countered in Italian. "Siediti, firma, o chiamiamo I giornali. Sit down, sign, or we call the newspapers." Moretti looked at Sterling. Sterling looked at the ruined contracts, then at the Italians. "Sit down," Sterling commanded. "We are renegotiating the price. Now." Moretti sat. Rick, who was still cowering in the corner, looked at Sophia. You just blackmailed a billionaire." "I just saved the company," Sophia whispered, her hands trembling as the adrenaline crashed. Sterling didn't look at her. He was already typing on his phone, summoning his legal team to bring fresh papers. But as he typed, he spoke one sentence to the room. "Get this woman a chair, a real one." and bring her dinner. The adrenaline that had sustained Sophia through the high-stakes negotiation began to drain away the moment the ink dried on the fresh contracts. It left her feeling hollow and shaky, her knees trembling beneath the starched fabric of her uniform. Damon Sterling stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked like a man who had just run a marathon and won gold. He shook hands with Giovanni Moretti, the tension of the evening replaced by the weary camaraderie of two sharks who had decided not to eat each other just yet. "Jessica," Sterling said, turning to his assistant while looking at his phone, "ensure the wire transfer is initiated by morning." And he paused, his steel-grey eyes finding Sophia in the shadows where she had retreated. "Get her information. I want to send a bonus, a substantial one." "Yes, Mr. Sterling," Jessica said, scribbling on her notepad. She looked exhausted, her bun coming loose. Sterling walked over to Sophia. For a second, the bustling restaurant vanished. He looked at her, really looked at her, not as a waitress, but as the strategist who had just saved him $50 million. "You have a brilliant mind, Ms. Hart," Sterling said. His voice was low, intimate in the crowded room. "Don't waste it refilling water glasses." Sophia managed a weak smile. "I do what I have to do, sir." "We'll be in touch," he promised. Then, flanked by his security and legal team, he swept out of L'Obsidienne and into the rainy Manhattan night. Sophia watched him go, a spark of hope igniting in her chest, a substantial bonus, maybe enough to cover next month's rent and the co-pay for her dad's new medication. Maybe this was the break she needed. She turned back to the table to begin clearing the debris of the negotiation, wine-stained papers, espresso cups, the remnants of the meal. "Leave it!" a voice hissed behind her. Sophia turned. Rick was standing there. His face was blotchy, his eyes rimmed with red. He looked like a man whose entire world had imploded, and he was looking for someone to blame. "Rick, I can explain." "Explain!" Rick's voice rose to a screech, causing heads to turn at nearby tables. "You want to explain how you humiliated me? How you broke protocol? How you spoke to a VIP guest without permission? How you blackmailed a billionaire in my dining room?" "I saved the deal," Sophia argued, her voice trembling but firm. "Mr. Sterling was going to lose everything. You heard him. He thanked me." "Mr. Sterling is a guest," Rick shouted, stepping into her personal space. "He doesn't know the rules of this establishment, but you do. Rule number 1. The staff is invisible. Tonight, you made yourself the center of attention. You made me look incompetent. You spilled the sauce, Rick. You almost ruined it yourself." The slap was verbal, but it hit just as hard. Rick went deadly silent. The vein in his forehead pulsed. "Get out," he whispered. Sophia blinked. "What? You're fired. Get your things and get out of my restaurant. If I see you here in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police for trespassing." "You can't do that," Sophia gasped, panic rising in her throat like bile. "Rick, please. I need this job. My dad. You know about my dad." "I don't care about your dad. I care about the reputation of L'Obsidienne," Rick sneered. "And you are a liability. You're banned, Hart. I'll make sure every high-end restaurant in New York knows you're a loose cannon who listens in on private conversations and threatens guests." "But Mr. Sterling said—" "Mr. Sterling is gone," Rick yelled. "And he's never coming back to a place where the waitresses think they run the show. Go!" Sophia looked around the kitchen. The line cooks, the dishwasher, even Chloe the hostess. They all looked down. No one met her eyes. They needed their jobs too much to stand up for her. The hope that had ignited 10 minutes ago was extinguished, replaced by a cold, crushing dread. Sophia untied her apron. She folded it neatly and placed it on the stainless steel counter. She didn't cry. She couldn't afford the luxury of tears right now. She walked to her locker, grabbed her coat and her purse, and walked out the back door into the alley. The rain was coming down harder now. It soaked through her thin coat in seconds. She walked to the subway station, her feet numb. Fired. The word echoed in her head with the rhythm of the train wheels. She arrived at her apartment building in Queens an hour later. It was a brick walk-up with a broken buzzer and a hallway that smelled of boiled cabbage and old cigarettes. She unlocked the door to apartment 4B quietly. Inside, the only light came from the street lamp outside, filtering through the blinds. The rhythmic whoosh hiss of an oxygen concentrator filled the small living room. Her father, Arthur, was asleep in the recliner. He looked frail, his skin papery and pale. A blanket was tucked around his legs. On the small table next to him was a stack of envelopes, all with red stamps. Final notice, past due, urgent. Sophia picked up the top one. It was the electricity bill. They were 2 months behind. She sank onto the worn sofa, burying her face in her hands. She had promised him she would handle it. She had promised she would keep the lights on and the medicine coming. And now, because she had tried to be something more than a waitress for 1 hour, she had lost the only lifeline they had. She thought of Damon Sterling. He had said he would be in touch. He had promised a bonus. But he didn't have her number. He didn't know her address. He had told Jessica to get it, and Jessica would call the restaurant. Sophia's stomach dropped. Rick. Rick would never give them her information. He would lie. He would block it. She was cut off. The man she had saved was celebrating in a penthouse somewhere, and she was sitting in the dark, listening to her father breathe, wondering how she was going to buy groceries on Tuesday. 2 days later, the headquarters of Sterling Dynamics was buzzing with an energy that hadn't been felt in years. The acquisition of Moretti Logistics was headline news. The Wall Street Journal called it the deal of the decade. Damon Sterling sat at the head of the mahogany conference table on the 50th floor, looking out at the skyline. He should have been ecstatic. His legal team had just finished the initial audit of Moretti's books. "It's confirmed, Damon," said Marcus, his lead counsel. "The labor strike in Naples is real. The unions filed the paperwork this morning. If we had signed the original contract without the liability clause, we would be on the hook for approximately $60 million in operational stoppages over the next quarter." Damon nodded slowly, swiveling his chair around. 60 million. At least, Marcus laughed, shaking his head. It was a poison pill. Moretti tried to slip it past us. I still don't know how you caught it. None of us saw the nuances in the Italian addendums. "I didn't catch it," Damon said, his voice distant. "The waitress did." The room went quiet. "The waitress?" Marcus asked, confused. "Sophia Hart," Damon said. He tested the name on his tongue. It sounded strong, capable. "Jessica, where are we on the bonus check?" Jessica, who was organizing files in the corner, froze. She turned slowly, her face pale. "Sir, I was waiting for the right moment to tell you." Damon frowned. "Tell me what? Did you send the check?" "I called the restaurant yesterday morning," Jessica said nervously. "I spoke to the manager, Rick. He said—" She hesitated. "He said what?" Damon's patience, never in high supply, was evaporating. "He said that Sophia Hart no longer works there. He said she was a temporary hire from an agency." "So, call the agency. That's the thing, sir. Rick said she was let go because she was unstable." Damon's eyes narrowed. "Unstable?" "He claims she was intoxicated during the shift," Jessica continued, looking at her notes. "And that after we left, she attempted to steal a bottle of vintage wine from the cellar. He said he fired her on the spot and threatened to call the police." The boardroom was silent. Marcus scoffed. "Well, that explains it." Desperate people do desperate things. Dodged a bullet there, Damon. Imagine if you had hired her. Damon stood up abruptly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. He thought back to the dinner. He remembered Sophia's hands. They were shaking, yes, but not from alcohol, from exhaustion. He remembered her eyes, clear, intelligent, terrified but determined. He remembered the way she had navigated the complex dialect of the Veneto region, something a drunk person could never do. And he remembered the way Rick, the sweaty manager, had looked at her, with contempt, with jealousy. "He's lying," Damon stated flatly. "Sir?" Jessica asked. "The manager. He's lying. That woman saved this company $60 million with a nuance in translation that a PhD student would struggle with. You think she decided to steal a bottle of wine 5 minutes later?" Damon buttoned his jacket. "Cancel my afternoon meetings." "All of them," Jessica squeaked. "All of them. And bring the car around. We're going to lunch." "Where?" "L'Obsidienne." The lunch rush at L'Obsidienne was in full swing. It was a symphony of clinking silverware and murmuring voices. Rick was in his element, greeting a senator at table 6 when the double doors swung open. The room seemed to darken as Damon Sterling walked in. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He was wearing a black turtleneck and a long coat that made him look like a sleek, dangerous predator. 2 large security guards trailed him. Rick's smile faltered. He rushed over. "Mr. Sterling, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you. I can have the private alcove ready and—" "I'm not here to eat, Rick," Damon said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that stopped Rick cold. "Oh, then, how can I help you?" Damon stepped closer, towering over the manager. "I want Sophia Hart's address." Rick swallowed hard. "Sir, as I told your assistant, employee records are confidential. And besides, that girl is trouble. She's a thief. I really wouldn't waste your time." "You said she was a temp from an agency," Damon interrupted. "Yes, exactly. So we don't have a permanent—" "Which agency?" Damon asked. Rick stammered. I believe it was Staff Pro, or maybe Elite Servers. I handle so many." Damon stared at him. The silence stretched for 10 painful seconds. Then, Damon turned to one of his guards. "Call the health inspector and the labor board. Tell them I suspect undocumented workers and severe hygiene violations at this establishment. Tell them to bring the full audit team." Rick's eyes bulged. "Mr. Sterling, you can't—" "I can," Damon said calmly. "I can bury this place in litigation and inspections until you are serving rats in the alleyway. Or you can go into your office, open the file on Sophia Hart, and give me her address. You have 30 seconds. Rick looked at the security guard, who already had his phone out. He looked at Damon's stone-cold face. He realized with a sinking heart that he was playing checkers while Damon Sterling was playing nuclear war. "Okay," Rick squeaked. "Okay, I'll get it." Rick practically ran to the back office. 2 minutes later, he returned with a piece of paper, his hands shaking. Damon took the paper. He glanced at the address. Queens, a low-income district. "Did she steal wine?" Damon asked, not looking up. "No," Rick whispered. "Did she drink on the job?" "No." "You fired her because she made you look small," Damon said, looking Rick in the eye. "And in doing so, you insulted me. If she isn't reinstated with back pay by the end of the day, I will buy this building and evict you myself." Damon turned and walked out, leaving Rick hyperventilating next to the host stand. The drive to Queens took 45 minutes. The scenery changed from the glass towers of Manhattan to the worn-down brick facades of Sophia's neighborhood. The black Maybach looked like a spaceship landed in the middle of the cracked pavement of 34th Avenue. Damon stepped out. The air smelled of rain and exhaust. He looked up at the building. It was old. The fire escape was rusted. He walked into the vestibule. The buzzer panel was broken. He pressed the button next to 4B. Heart. No answer. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Just as he was about to call Jessica to find a superintendent, the front door creaked open. An elderly woman with a shopping cart shuffled out. Damon caught the door before it closed and slipped inside. He walked up the 3 flights of stairs. The hallway was dimly lit. He found door 4B. He knocked. From inside he heard a muffled cough, then a voice, a man's voice. "Soph, is that you? Did you forget your keys?" Damon hesitated. "Mr. Hart?" There was a silence, then the sound of shuffling feet. The door opened a crack, held by a chain. An older man peered out. He was breathing with a nasal cannula, an oxygen tube trailing behind him. He looked sick, but his eyes were kind. "Who are you?" Arthur Hart asked. "My name is Damon Sterling. I'm Sophia's employer. Is she home?" Arthur's face fell. He slumped slightly against the doorframe. "Oh, you're from the restaurant?" "Yes." "She's not here," Arthur said, his voice thick with worry. "She went to the pawn shop on Main Street, taking her mother's ring. Said we needed the cash for the electric bill." Arthur looked at Damon with pleading eyes. "Please, sir, don't be hard on her. She told me she got fired. She's a good girl. She's trying her best." Damon felt a physical blow to his chest. Pawn shop, electric bill. While he had been toasting with champagne to a $60 million victory, the woman who made it possible was selling her mother's jewelry to keep the lights on. "Which pawn shop?" Damon asked, his voice rough. "Goldman's, 3 blocks down." "Thank you, Arthur," Damon said gently. "And don't worry about the electric bill, or the job. Everything is going to change." Damon turned and ran down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. He burst out onto the street, startling his driver. "Sir, stay here," Damon barked. "Watch the building." Damon took off, running down the street, his coat flapping behind him, heading toward the neon sign of the pawn shop in the distance. He wasn't a man who ran. He was a man who sent people. But today, he ran. He reached the shop just as he saw her. Sophia was standing at the counter, her back to the glass door. She was handing a small velvet box to a man behind a grate. Her shoulders were hunched in defeat. Damon pushed the door open. The bell jingled violently. "Stop!" Sophia spun around, her eyes wide. The broker behind the counter looked up, annoyed. "We're doing a transaction here, buddy," the broker grunted. Sophia stared at him. She looked pale, tired, wearing a sweatshirt that was too big for her. "Mr. Sterling?" she whispered, as if she were seeing a ghost. Damon walked up to the counter. He reached out and placed his hand over the velvet box, stopping the broker from taking it. "The transaction is cancelled," Damon said. "Hey, she needs the cash," the broker sneered. Damon pulled out a black credit card, the kind made of titanium that has no limit, and slammed it on the counter. "Give me the ring, and give me whatever you have in the register for inconvenience." He looked at Sophia. Her eyes were filling with tears. "Mr. Sterling, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Rick said—" "Rick is an idiot," Damon said, his voice softening as he looked down at her. He picked up the velvet box and pressed it into her hand. "And I don't let my partners sell their heirlooms." "Partners?" Sophia blinked, a tear escaping and rolling down her cheek. "We have a lot to talk about, Sophia," Damon said. "But first, we're getting you and your father out of this neighborhood." 3 weeks later, the transition from the cracked pavement of Queens to the 51st floor of the Sterling Dynamics Tower felt like a hallucination. Sophia Hart stood in the elevator, smoothing the lapel of a navy blazer that cost more than her father's car. She was no longer a waitress. Her new title was Lead International Liaison, a role Damon had invented to justify her presence. But a title didn't buy respect. Inside the glass-walled boardroom, the atmosphere was toxic. Archibald Cross, the chairman of the board, sat at the head of the table like a king on a crumbling throne. He was 60, silver-haired, and made no secret of his disdain for Damon's pet project. "Ms. Hart," Cross drawled, as Sophia took her seat next to Damon. "So kind of you to join the adults. We were just discussing the Brazilian expansion, or rather, the disaster it has become." Damon looked exhausted. "It's a regulatory delay, Archibald. Nothing more." "It's a blockade," interjected Marcus Thorne, the company's general counsel. Marcus was Damon's oldest ally, a man with a Harvard smile and a serpent's eyes. "The regulators in Rio are demanding new environmental impact studies. It pushes the launch back 6 months. The stock will tank." Marcus slid a stack of printed emails across the table. "I suggest I fly to Rio personally. I have contacts. I can smooth this over, but it will cost us." Damon reached for the papers, but Sophia got there first. She scanned the correspondence projected on the screen, her eyes narrowing. The emails were supposedly from the Brazilian Ministry of Infrastructure. "No," Sophia said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. Cross rolled his eyes. "The waitress has an opinion on international law?" "I have an opinion on syntax," Sophia said, standing up. She pointed at the screen. "These emails are fraudulent." "That's ridiculous," Marcus scoffed, though his smile faltered. "They are official communiques." "They are written in European Portuguese, not Brazilian," Sophia explained, her voice gaining strength. "See this phrase? A Vossa Excellencia. That is formal Lisbon dialect. A bureaucrat in Rio would never use that construction. They would use O Senhor. Whoever wrote this learned Portuguese in Portugal, or used a translation tool set to the wrong region." The room went deadly silent. Damon looked at the screen, then at Marcus. "Check the IP headers," Damon ordered the IT director in the corner. "On it," the technician typed furiously. Seconds later, he looked up, pale. The emails didn't come from Brazil. They originated from a private server in Zurich. "Zurich," Damon repeated, his voice dangerously low, "where Moretti Logistics has a holding company." Sophia watched the color drain from Marcus's face. The betrayal was absolute. Marcus hadn't planned to fix the problem in Rio. He was orchestrating the sabotage from inside. "Get out," Damon whispered to Marcus. "Damon, she's crazy." "Security," Damon roared. 2 guards dragged a sputtering Marcus out of the room. Archibald Cross looked at Sophia with a mixture of shock and begrudging fear. She hadn't just translated a document, she had exposed a coup. Damon exhaled, slumping in his chair. He looked at Sophia with intense gratitude. "That's twice you've saved me." "You need to watch your back," Sophia said softly. "The wolves are inside the house." Before Damon could answer, the double doors burst open. Jessica, his assistant, ran in, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Sterling, don't look at the window." "Why?" Damon asked, standing up. "Because the FBI is in the lobby," she sobbed. "They have a warrant for your arrest." The scene was a media circus. Cameras flashed blindingly as Damon Sterling was led out of his own building in handcuffs. Insider trading, embezzlement, corporate espionage. The charges were heavy. The evidence was damning. Millions of dollars had been transferred from the Moretti accounts into a shell company registered in Damon's name. Sophia stood in the lobby, frozen, as she watched them shove Damon into the back of a squad car. He looked at her through the glass, his expression unreadable. He didn't fight. He didn't yell. He just looked at her. Trust no one, his eyes seemed to say. The next 48 hours were a nightmare. The company stock plummeted. Archibald Cross immediately called an emergency vote to strip Damon of his CEO title. The assets were frozen. Sophia was barred from the building. Her keycard was deactivated. She sat in her father's room at the Kensington, watching the news. "The fall of the Titan," the anchor announced. "Damon Sterling faces 20 years in federal prison. Sources say his former general counsel, Marcus Thorne, is cooperating with authorities." "He didn't do it," Sophia said to the empty room. "I know," her father said from his bed. He was reading a book, looking stronger. "So, what are you going to do about it?" "I can't do anything, Dad. I'm nobody again. They locked me out." "You were never nobody, Sophia," Arthur said sternly. "You were a warrior when you were waiting tables, and you're a warrior now. Use what you have." "I have nothing. You have his trust, and you have your ears." Sophia stood up. She paced the room. Marcus. Marcus was the key. He had been humiliated. He was working with Moretti. But how did they plant the money? She needed to talk to Luca Moretti. It was a suicide mission. But she had no other choice. She found Luca's location through social media. He was at a private club in Tribeca, celebrating. Sophia didn't wear a suit this time. She put on her old black dress, the one she used to wear for hostess shifts. She pulled her hair back. She put on red lipstick. She looked like exactly what Luca thought she was. A pretty distraction. She walked into the club. The bouncer tried to stop her, but she slipped him a $100 bill, the last of her cash. She found Luca in a VIP booth, surrounded by models and champagne. He looked up when she approached. His eyes narrowed, then widened with amusement. "Well, well," Luca slurred, holding a glass. The little translator. "Come to beg for a job? I heard Sterling is finished." "I came to congratulate you," Sophia lied, her voice smooth like honey. "You won." Luca laughed. He waved the models away. "Sit, Bella, drink." Sophia sat. She poured a glass of champagne, but didn't drink. "How did you do it? Damon is smart. I didn't think anyone could outsmart him." "Damon is arrogant," Luca sneered. "He thinks he sees everything, but he didn't see the digital signature." "Digital signature?" Sophia asked innocently, leaning closer. "The transfer," Luca bragged, his ego fueled by alcohol and the presence of a beautiful woman. "Marcus, he's a useful idiot. He gave us the access codes to the server weeks ago. We planted the trail before the deal was even signed. By the time your precious Damon realized the strike was real, the money was already in his name." Sophia's heart pounded. She needed him to be specific. "But Marcus will turn on you," she challenged, "to save himself." "Marcus?" Luca laughed darkly. "Marcus thinks he's getting a cut. Tomorrow he has an accident. A car crash, perhaps, or a drug overdose. Loose ends, Sophia. You know how it is." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. They were going to kill Marcus to silence him. "You're brilliant, Luca," she whispered. "I am," he agreed. He reached out to touch her face. "You should work for me. I need someone who speaks languages." "I'll think about it," Sophia said. She stood up. "I have to use the powder room." "Don't be long," Luca warned. Sophia walked calmly to the bathroom. Once inside, she locked the door and pulled out her phone. It was recording. She had the confession. But it wasn't enough. A recording obtained without consent in a private club might be inadmissible. And mentioning the hit on Marcus, she had to save Marcus. The man who tried to destroy her was the only witness who could save Damon. She dialed a number she had memorized from the company directory. "Hello?" a frantic voice answered. It was Marcus. Marcus, it's Sophia. You? I have nothing to say to you. I'm with the FBI. You're not safe, Sophia said urgently. I just left Luca Moretti. He's planning to kill you, Marcus. Tonight. You're lying. We have a deal. There is no deal. You are a loose end. He admitted it. He said you're going to have an accident. Get out of your house. Now! There was silence on the line. Then the sound of glass breaking in the background. Oh God, Marcus whispered. Someone is at the door. Run, Marcus. Go to the police precinct. Don't let them in. The line went dead. Sophia stared at her phone. She had done all she could. Now she had to get this recording to the only person who could use it. She ran out of the club, past a confused Luca, and into the rainy night. The courtroom was packed. It was the arraignment hearing, but because of the high profile, it felt like a sentencing. Damon Sterling sat at the defense table, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed violently with his usual elegance. He looked gaunt. He hadn't slept in 3 days. The prosecutor was making his opening statement. Your Honor, Mr. Sterling is a flight risk. He has billions in offshore accounts. We request remand without bail. Damon's lawyer stood up to argue, but the doors to the courtroom banged open. Objection! A voice rang out. The judge banged his gavel. Order! Who is that? Sophia Hart marched down the center aisle. She was soaked from the rain, her hair plastered to her face, clutching a flash drive. Miss Hart! Damon stood up, shock registering on his face. Sophia, get out of here. It's not safe. I have evidence, Sophia announced, stopping before the bench. Evidence that exonerates Damon Sterling and implicates Luca Moretti and Archibald Cross in a conspiracy to frame him. This is highly irregular, the judge scowled. Your Honor, the prosecutor sneered. This woman is a former waitress with no legal standing. This is a stunt. I have a witness, Sophia said, turning to the back of the room. The doors opened again. Marcus Thorne walked in. He was bruised, his arm in a sling, flanked by 4 police officers. He looked terrified, but alive. A collective gasp went through the room. Mr. Thorne, the judge asked, I thought you were a witness for the prosecution. I was, Marcus said, his voice shaking. But I was lied to. And last night they tried to kill me. He pointed a trembling finger at the prosecution's table. The documents were forged. I gave Luca Moretti the access codes. Damon Sterling knew nothing. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Damon looked at Marcus, then at Sophia. He realized what she had done. She had walked into the lion's den, outsmarted the devil, and saved the man who betrayed her, just to save him. Silence! The judge roared. Mr. Thorne, are you confessing to perjury and corporate espionage? Yes, Marcus wept. Just please, put me in protective custody. Don't let Moretti get me. The judge looked at the prosecutor. It seems your case just evaporated, Counselor. Dismissed. The judge slammed the gavel. Mr. Sterling, you are free to go. Damon didn't wait for the bailiff to unlock the gate. He pushed through, ignoring his lawyers, ignoring the press. He went straight to Sophia. She was standing there, shivering, the adrenaline crashing. You, Damon said, his voice thick with emotion. He grabbed her shoulders. You crazy, brilliant, impossible woman. I told you, Sophia managed a weak smile. I don't make mistakes in translation. Damon didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the board. He pulled her into him, burying his face in her wet hair. For a moment, the invincible CEO was just a man holding on to the only thing that mattered. The reopening of L'Obsidienne was the social event of the season. But it was under new management. Rick was gone, working at a fast food joint in Jersey, rumor had it. The new owner stood by the door, greeting guests. It was Arthur Hart. He looked healthy, happy, wearing a tuxedo. Damon had bought the restaurant and gifted the deed to Sophia's father. At the best table in the house, table 4, Damon Sterling sat. But he wasn't looking at a contract. He was looking at the woman sitting across from him. Sophia was no longer wearing a black uniform. She wore a dress of emerald green silk. She was the chief operating officer of Sterling Dynamics. "You know," Damon said, pouring the wine himself, a vintage Barolo, "I still owe you that bonus." Sophia smiled, clinking her glass against his. "I think the promotion covers it." "No," Damon said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. It wasn't her mother's ring this time. It was a new one, a diamond that caught the light like a star. "I need a partner, Sophia," Damon said softly. "In business and in everything else. Someone who speaks the language of my life." Sophia looked at the ring, then at the man who had given her the world, just as she had saved his. "Just one condition," she teased, tears shining in her eyes. "Anything." "No more translators," she whispered. "We speak for ourselves." Damon smiled, the first true, unburdened smile she had ever seen. "Deal." And that is the incredible story of Sophia Hart, the waitress who proved that true power isn't about the suit you wear or the money in your bank account. It's about your mind, your integrity, and the courage to speak up when everyone else stays silent. Sophia went from wiping tables to running an empire because she refused to let the world define her value. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, redemption, and romance, please hit that like button. It helps us create more stories like this for you. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a drama. What would you have done if you were in Sophia's shoes? Would you have saved Marcus? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.